Which provider belong in the highest cost quartile? That's the first question. I want you to think about not the syntax, not the function name, just the business question. A stakeholder does not usually come to us and say, please use NTILE. They say something like, can you split these providers into groups so we know who is the highest cost segment? That's where NTILE becomes useful. It helps us take an ordered list and split into buckets. In this lesson, we are using 4 buckets, so we can think of them like a quartiles. The roadmap is simple: order, split, and interpret. First, order the rows by the business metric. In our example, that is total paid amount descending, because we care about highest cost providers first. Second, split the ordered rows into n buckets. Entile of 4 means 4 buckets. Entile of 5 means 5 buckets. The number inside entile controls how many groups SQL tries to create. Third, interpret what bucket means. Bucket 1 might mean highest cost providers. Bucket 4 might mean lowest cost providers. But that meaning comes from the order by direction and the business question. Now, here is the warning. I want you to remember before we go into SSMS. Entile creates roughly equal row count buckets, does not create equal dollar ranges. The difference matters a lot. If we have 100 providers and use entile of 4, SQL is trying to put about 25 providers into each bucket. It is not trying to make each bucket the same amount. So the question is not just, can I write entile of 4? The better question is, what does this bucket mean? What will the business do with the segment? Let's go into SQL Server Management Studio and make this very practical. Let us start with the business problem before we touch entile. Suppose I have a provider report with a total paid amount. I can rank every provider first, second, third, fourth, and keep going. But sometimes business does not need an exact position. They want segments, high cost group, next group, lower cost groups. So first I summarize claims to one row per provider and sort providers from highest paid to lowest. This order list is what entile is going to divide. Now we add entile 4. 4 means I want 4 buckets. Order by inside over is still doing the important business work. Because total paid amount is descending, the highest cost providers arrive first. Entile walks through the total ordered set and assign bucket numbers 1 through 4. Bucket 1 is the first chunk of ordered provider list. So the design it represents the highest cost quartile. Notice that entile is not asking how far apart the dollar amounts are. It is distributing rows across the buckets. Now I want to validate what entile actually did. I count how many providers landed in each quartile. The bucket sizes are as even as SQL can make them. If the provider count does not divide perfectly by 4, the earlier numbered buckets receive one extra row. So equal buckets means the counts differ by at most 1. Also look at the minimum and maximum dollar amounts. Those value ranges can be very different. This small example removes all the noise from the larger data set. We have exactly 10 rows and ask for 4 buckets. 10 does not divide evenly by 4. 2 rows fit in each bucket, which accounts for 8 rows. 2 rows remain. Entile gives 1 extra row to the earlier buckets. So bucket 1 gets 3 rows, bucket 2 gets 3, bucket 3 gets 2, and bucket 4 gets 2. This is probably the most important misconception in the entire lesson. Entile 4 does not divide the dollar range into 4 equal pieces. It divides the ordered rows into 4 roughly equal sized groups. The case expression is doing something different. Fixed dollar bands. If the business wants equal sized population segments, entile may fit. If the business wants threshold bands, use threshold logic instead. 4 buckets are common because people like quartiles, but entile is not limited to 4. If the business wants 5 segments, use entile 5. 10 segments would use entile 10. The syntax barely changes, but the interpretation changes. Do not attach business meaning to the bucket number until you know what n represents. Now let us combine entile with partition by. Without partition by, we segmented the entire provider population. Here, For each provider, I want the provider's own claims divided into three paid amount groups. Partition by provider ID restart the buckets for every provider. Then paid amount descending defines the sequence inside that provider. This shows the segmentation can happen globally or independently inside each business group. This is a subtle entile behavior that matters in real reporting. Suppose several providers have exactly the same paid amount. Does entile promise that tied values stay together? No. Entile is trying to balance the row counts. If bucketed boundary lands in the middle of tied rows, equal values can land in two different buckets. Provider ID is included only to make the assignment reproducible. If identical values must always stay in the same segment, entile may not be the right tool by itself. Now we turn segmentation into an actual business output. The business only wants the highest cost segment for review or outreach. I calculate entile first inside a CTE, then filter cost quartile equals 1 outside. Because our ordering was total paid amount descending, bucket 1 represents the highest part of the ordered provider population. Entile creates the segment, then normal SQL filtering, let us act on it. Let us finish by transferring the idea to members. The business wants 5 approximately equal member groups based on total paid amount. First summarize to one row per member, then use entire 5 ordered from highest total paid amount to lowest. Bucket 1 is the highest ordered member segment and bucket 5 is the lowest. And one final reminder, these are not 5 equal dollar ranges. They are 5 roughly equal row count groups after sorting. If you understand that distinction, you understand entire. Let us close this out by stepping back from the syntax. Entile is really about segmentation. We order the rows, split them into buckets, and then interpret what each segment means. For our provider example, Q1 was the highest cost group because we sorted total paid amount descending. If we had sorted ascending, the meaning would have flipped. That's why order inside over is still doing the business work. The most important sentence for this lesson is this. Entile creates equal count buckets after sorting, not equal value ranges. So when we say Q1, Q2, Q3, and Q4, we are not saying every bucket covers the same dollar distance. We are saying SQL distributed the ordered rows across 4 buckets as evenly as possible. For example, let us take the 10 row example. 10 rows into 4 buckets does not divide evenly. If we give every bucket 2 rows, that uses 8 rows, we still have 2 extra rows left. Entile gives those extra rows to the earlier buckets. So we get 3, 3, 2, and 2. That's why the first 2 buckets have 3 rows and the last 2 buckets have 2 rows. It is not random. It is SQL trying to keep the buckets as balanced as possible. The best question to ask after using entile is not just which bucket did this row land in. The better question is which bucket is this provider or member in and what should we do with that segment. That's where this becomes useful in real analytics work. Provider cost quartiles, member risk segments, customer value groups, sales performance tiers, and many other cases where we need buckets instead of exact ranks. One final caution. If tied values or exact value threshold matter, entire may not be the full answer by itself. Entire is row count driven. Fixed business thresholds are different design. So far in this series, we have grouped rows, ranked rows, and no bucketed rows. But there is another very common business question. What changed compared to the previous row? Maybe this month versus last month, this claim versus the prior claim, or today compared to yesterday, or this year versus last year. That's where lag comes in. In video 8, we will use lag to compare the current row directly against the previous row over a timeline. Thank you for watching Data with Srini Volati. Keep practicing, keep querying, and I will see you in video 8.